I thought maybe stop to go cold.
Hey, you know what? If you go stand in the corner, you'll warm up. You know why? It's always 90 degrees in the corner.
Oh.
Hashtag
That wasn't even a little bit good.
You went and got your sweater.
Oh, that was
I love how it got quiet.
We're gonna call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Target,
Here.
Levin, Mirabella.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
White.
Here.
Whitmore. Here. Bruno.
Here. Please stand for tonight's invocation and pledge. Invocation will be provided by myself. Please bow your heads. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, whose goodness fills our hearts with joy. Blessed are you who have brought us together this evening to work in harmony and peace. Strengthen us with your grace and wisdom. May everything we say and do begin with your inspiration and continue with your help, so that all our prayers and works may begin in you and by you. Be happily ended. Glory and praise to you forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is approval of the previous meeting minutes. I need a motion to approve the August 6th, 2019 regular board meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Roll call, please.
Target,
Aye.
Levin. Mirabella.
Aye.
McCarthy.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Whitmore. Aye.
Motion carried. Move on to old business. Need a motion to make a motion to deny the Retail Strategies contract renewal term November 1st, 2019 through October 31st, 2020.
So moved. Second.
Okay, discussion on this. We've attempted to utilize this Retail Strategies firm for the last 3 years, and it didn't turn out like we hoped. I don't know, I'm going to kind of allow our trustee Hargett and also Pat Perzio to interject as to anything that they would like to interject.
It was a 3-year contract that we signed. This was a regional partnership with Zion Beach Park, where we shared the cost of the consultant based on the size of each community. We kind of prorated the cost that way. The 3 years is up. There are some kind of coals in the fire, which, if anything comes from those, Pat, the existing agreement would still be in place to cover anything that was already in process.
For a 2-year period after.
2 years, right.
After the extension.
But we're not, we're recommending to not sign an extension with them.
Correct. All right. Anything, Pat? Okay. So I need a roll call.
Target,
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Mirabella.
Aye.
McCarthy.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Whitmore. Aye.
Motion carried. We move on to Village Administrator's Report. Greg?
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I had sent out to each of the board members and staff the calendar for fiscal year 2021 the budget. This will allow us an opportunity to turn around and get the budget out into the hands of not only the department heads, but the elected officials, and then ultimately to the public much further in advance than we normally do it now. Also allows for greater time on the wage policy ordinance. So that is in your mailboxes for your consumption. Also, we've begun to create the new job descriptions to complement the wage and compensation study. I bring that up solely for the reason that we hope to factor that into our decision-making process as staff makes recommendations for wages and compensation for the coming year, and then ultimately as a mechanism for the board to decide what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate as relates to compensation. We are also still gathering information. Village attorney has also given me a lead with another village to look at some data as it relates to wage and compensation study as part of our aggregation of information. And that's all I have for tonight's report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Craig Jackson? All right, we move on to Mayor's report. I need a motion to approve Nicole and Kim Henderson's request permission to have a medical benefit raffle at Harbor Brewing for Mark Henderson's medical bills.
So moved. Second.
All right, I'll turn it over to Kim if she's here. She's not here. All right. I know she talked to me down at the marina, but there's medical bills for their son,
No, it's her
her
husband.
husband, and I don't know any details besides that. She never really explained it to me.
Very sick.
Very sick.
I think he should, transfer one transfer, something.
We're just allowing them to have a raffle, and
Correct.
that's all we're just giving them leeway on.
Right.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Need a roll call?
Target,
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Mirabella.
Aye.
McCarthy.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Whitmore.
Motion carried. We move on to clerk's correspondence.
I have none.
You have none. We move on to new business, committee reports, finance, trustee Weiss.
Thank you. I make a motion to approve accounts payable warrant 2019-7 in the amount of $155,055.48.
Second.
Okay, we got a second, okay. Any discussion on the accounts payable warrant? Okay. Roll call.
Target,
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Mirabella.
Aye.
McCarthy.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Whitmore. Aye.
Motion carried.
I make a motion we accept July treasurer's report.
Second.
Second. Any discussion on July's treasurer's report? Need a roll call.
Target,
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Mirabella.
Aye.
McCarthy.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Whitmore. Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, trustee Woods. Move on to public hearings. We'd ask you to provide us with your name and your address if you'd like to address the board. Come right up. Right on up.
My name is Bob Grabnick, and I live at 1205 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Hello, Bob.
Actually, some of you may know me. I lived here almost all my life, but 16 years ago my wife moved to South Carolina and just moved back about a year and a half ago. And we're glad to be back. I'm going to present a brief statement here that I prepared, and I'll give a copy to the trustees. And attach the signatures of 43 homeowners in our neighborhood. And somebody said this. The undersigned are residents in the area bordered by 13th, 14th, and Monroe. We have concerns about what was done to that property last summer. Our understanding is the property owner did not obtain the proper permits from the county to cut down so many of the trees, as this property contains wetlands / conservancy. And I believe, if it wasn't for Mr. Dispersio, I think more damage would have been done. Since that time, the trees have been piled up all over the property, and what wasn't attractive for us has become an eyesore to the neighborhood. And we feel strongly that this may even have an impact on the value of our homes, and certainly would raise doubts in the minds of prospective home purchasers. We are therefore asking the village to address the following questions. Number one, what legal authority does the village have to require the property owner to clean up the mess? If the village can force homeowners to keep their grass cut and not allow junk to be piled up in yards, why does not the same principle apply here? Number two, does the village have any intention of taking any type of action in this matter? Perhaps some type of fine every month until the matter is taken care of. Can the village bring in a tree service to clean the property up and bill the property owner for the cost and perhaps put a lien on the property until the owner pays. This may seem extreme, perhaps to some, but not to the residents of this area who have, in essence, had the neighborhood turned into an eyesore. 3, if the village cannot or is not willing to take action on our behalf, we believe the village officials should have at least contacted the neighborhood residents and further should have told us exactly what happened, how this mess came about, and further given us some hope of resolution by telling us who we should be contacting, perhaps some department of the county, to seek help enforcing the property owner to clean up the mess they created. No residents of our neighborhood broke any laws or did anything that was not legally allowed, but yet we feel we're the ones who've been harmed. We certainly appreciate all of you listening to our concerns and look very much to receiving information and guidance in this matter. I just have an additional short thing that's come up since I prepared that. I was told by one of the neighbors of this property that they had been in constant contact with the county and was told just last week that the county has been working with the Corps of Engineers on this matter, and further that the Corps of Engineers is very close to taking some type of legal action against the property owner in the form of fines, etc. However, it would seem that their only concern is to prevent further action by the property owner on this property. It would seem that they plan no action to force the property owner to clean up the mess. And number 2, I don't know what the village's position, or the village's attorney's position on this is, but if the village believes they can enforce an ordinance by the property owner to clean up the mess, we would ask that you discuss this matter with the village attorney. My neighbor who's here tonight is a retired public works employee for the village of Lake Bluff. And he explained to me that Lake Bluff never had any kind of ordinance to cover this either, until the historic Mr. T fiasco in Lake Forest, some of you, I'm sure, remember. And Lake Bluff quickly got an ordinance. So again, you know, we're not here certainly to be antagonistic. We just want some help, and we want to know what you can do or who you can direct us to try to get some action taken.
Now, Bob, I did drive by that property just last Thursday.
Thank you.
And I saw the trees laying horizontally, and it does look, it definitely looks like an eyesore. I totally agree with you. Now, tonight I just talked to Pat Perzio before the meeting, and he says that he told me that the stormwater management, it's in the hands of stormwater management. They did stop them. I know right now, if you can, you know, kind of bring us up to speed as to what stormwater has to do, or what they're...
Well, yeah, and I've communicated with many of the neighbors in that neighborhood over time, and I certainly appreciate the frustration that you must be feeling. I'm not sure what authority we do have when stormwater steps in, so I've been waiting, or we've been waiting to be led by what their outcome will be of their action. I've attempted to contact them over this past week to try to get an update. I have not heard anything back from them, so they can give me a status update of whatever action they are taking, because this timing is, I suppose, good. We knew that we were constantly getting inquiries from the neighborhood over the concern, so I'm trying to find out what, if anything, we might be able to do. But as of right now, I'm still not sure.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So that's whether they can continue to develop there or not, right? As far as stormwater management's decision, right?
Yeah, they'll determine exactly, you know, what violations.
What about those as far as within the village, the downed trees just sitting there? Is that any type of violation of our ordinances? So even though what they can move forward with, that's what you're talking about with stormwater management, right? But what about the fact that just the downed trees are sitting there? If that has anything to do with our ordinances, then we can still do something about that, can't we?
I'm aware of no ordinances that would suggest that downed trees on a vacant lot have to be removed. If it is
Not even that many?
And I'm going to defer to the attorney.
Because that's what we're saying, and those are two separate things. I mean, there is the eyesore there, so.
I don't think we've ever had that many.
Right.
Like you said before, when it came about in a different community, then they chose to make something happen.
Right, I understand, that's why I'm saying, so when we talk about waiting on stormwater management's decision, that has nothing to do, because if they still deny them to develop, they're not gonna remove those trees.
I went through Mr. Mayor, this was part of the call. I got contacted by Rebecca, one of the neighbors over there, and I reached out for her today to give her an update. The update I was going to provide her was very much what Pat had described with waiting for stormwater management. So first, I'd like to I've been driving past that location 3-4 times a week around the block just to look to see if there's.
And you and I drove by last Thursday.
Last week, and any hope of movement on that, because when I first started my position here and I drove the village, that jumped out at me and said hello real quick, but not in a nice voice, but that being said, I came back and I discussed it with Pat, and I said, what's our approach on this? And I went through the ordinance as well. In fact, I went through the entire code to look and see if we had an ordinance, and we don't. We simply don't. For a nuisance types ordinance for that, for the trees being down. So to echo Pat's comment, we're on standby waiting to hear from. Now, we'll make an effort this week, because Pat had just what was it, last week when you reached out, when you sent me the communication, Pat? We can put some pressure and see what we need to do to turn around and get them to move a little quicker in the response. So at least we get an idea of where they're going, but it's an intergovernmental agreement, intergovernmental situation there.
Well, if they haven't removed the trees now, and stormwater management says they can't develop, they'll have no incentive to remove the trees. That
understood.
So what happens?
Well, they may, I guess we don't know what stormwater's direction will be.
Did you say that the federal government is involved in the Army Corps?
I did say that, but, it's third-hand information, second-hand information. I was assured that this was true, but I don't have.
Is there water flowing from one area to another?
I've not walked through it, but I'm told there is.
If that be the case, then the Army Corps will get involved, because I know I was involved in another piece of property, not as a village trustee. But if there's water flowing from one area to another, the Army Corps will get involved with stormwater. And so if there's some kind of a watershed or water flowing through there that they need to be concerned about, they will be taking legal action on that. As far as I know, from the last time I was involved with a church that had the same problem, and the stormwater management, but the federal government got involved, the Army Corps did. And they made a determination that you need to do this and do that and so on and so forth.
Can I give you guys some history on this? Fritz, were you on the board when the litigation with the Burzes was ongoing? No, I think I'm the last survivor of that, other than Joel probably. But that property at one point in time in the early 2000s, late 90s, was owned by a family known as, by the name of Purze, P-U-R-Z-E. And they came in with a petition. We first noticed them when they came in with a petition that they wanted to subdivide the property. And this was actually their second request to subdivide the property. They wanted to run a road down sort of off-center, kind of between 13th and 14th Street, parallel with them, which would have resulted in about 35 or 40 houses being built there, and about a third of those houses would have had a road on both sides, what we call double frontages. And that was shot down in the Planning and Zoning Board for a pretty good reason, because for two good reasons. First, it's the double frontage thing, which makes a bunch of very undesirable living environments, the single-family housing. But also at the far east end of the property, which is where the water flows down there through the little sort of, for lack of a better term, it's a creek, but really not. It's just kind of a drainage swell. But they didn't want to put a road in there. So that case, they got irritated with the decision that was made by the village, and they filed a lawsuit. That lawsuit went to the court here in Waukegan. I defended the case myself, and we ended up winning the case, and then they took an appeal up to the appellate court in the 2nd District down in Elgin. So this is 2 years we've got invested in this thing after the decision of the Planning and Zoning Board, with a god-awful lot of attorney time, and many people in town actually gave affidavits and evidence of one kind or another. Ultimately, we finally won that case, and it took a lot of effort, but in the meantime, they had decided to do much the same thing that your current neighbors did, and they knocked down a whole bunch of trees on that property, and they drew the attention and started to move some of the dirt around. When they did that, they acquired the interest of stormwater management, and they also acquired the interest because that water does flow down into the ravine that goes to Kellogg Creek, that goes through the swamp out to Lake Michigan. So it is what they call waters of the United States, meaning that the Corps does in fact have jurisdiction over this property. The Corps at that time started with an enforcement action, ultimately brought in the Department of Justice and filed a federal lawsuit against the persons and stopped them from doing any further work on the property, and then made a series of requirements that they were supposed to return the property and restore it to its original condition. They did some of those things, but then the recession came along, and they kind of wandered off, and we've never heard from them ever since. So it's the idea that the Corps would get involved with this property is pretty good. They do have a history with it. They have all of their requirements, if you will. What the lawyers say, it runs with the land, meaning that these are the requirements that's set upon here, and the only way in which you can use that property is to get proper Corps permits in advance, which apparently they have not done by cutting down a whole bunch of trees. I am led to believe, although I have not seen the documentation, that perhaps the current owners bought it either at an estate sale or on back taxes or something like that, so they didn't pay a large market price for this property with the way a more traditional real estate developer would, something like that. The way this system really works is once the Corps of Engineers is involved and stormwater management is involved, we do tend to sit back and wait for them to tell us what they're going to do and on what schedule. Having gotten ourselves into litigation over similar issues in the past and spent a very large amount of village resources working on that, we are reluctant to get so far into things that are really outside of our real regulatory powers. The only thing is, stormwater and the Corps are directed primarily toward the protection and preservation of the water as it flows through that property, to prevent erosion, and to make sure that you don't have downstream flooding or upstream flooding caused by it. So that means that their interest in the trees is a little less than you might hope in this particular setting. However, I would take heart that the Corps has been involved in the past and has ordered remedial measures to be taken. But once they're in there, there are two factors that really come into play. One is the federal government has all the money in the world and can throw as much resources as it wants over any period of time it feels like. The second factor is because of the size of its bureaucracy, it tends to move much more slowly. And that's a double-edged sword that is of benefit in some respects, but it is a detriment when you're trying to get in terms of speedy action. I do know that the village does not have a tree preservation ordinance. One was discussed probably a good 20 years ago, I would guess, something like that, in the late 90s, I know, right about the time that this all came up. And probably shortly after the Mr. T incident, and there was a lot of public sentiment that they didn't want people that came here and talked to the village board in this very room, told them they really didn't want a tree ordinance. They felt it infringed upon their ability to use the property in the manner that they deemed best fitting. And there is a tension between people that want to see the community stay the way it is and people that want to use their land in the way they wish. And at that point in time, then the decision was really reached that we're not going to interfere with it. There wasn't the heart to push further along those roads. So it isn't like it hasn't been thought of. It's just that it never happened under those circumstances. So that, in a nutshell, is a story of that peculiar piece of property. And I don't know how much help that gives you, but it tells you that one thing's for sure, we have paid attention to it a lot over a long period of time. We've been hoping that there would be somebody that bought it when we heard it, that it had been purchased at below market rates. We thought perhaps that would make an impetus for development, because the cost of land being what it is, that's a pretty big factor in any development. But instead, you see what they've done, and they've just decided to saw out a bunch of trees and leave a mess behind. Probably in large part because the Corps of Stormwater, the first thing they issue are stop work orders. That means you stop all work, you stop everything. So those trees might be stopped there for, under a valid stop work order that we might not be able to undermine. We are members of the Stormwater Management Commission, the same as every municipality, county, but in this particular town, we don't, we don't have the regulatory power that is derived from stormwater. Some communities, larger ones, have on-staff engineers that are charged with, as sort of subsidiary agents of SMC. We had that capacity 20 years ago and gave it up after a couple of personnel changes, and it was too expensive to keep up with the training and the rest of it, so we have ceded that responsibility to stormwater. Now, once the Stormwater Management Commission comes in, we work with them, and on occasion, they ask us if we will file a lawsuit along with them to do an enforcement action, but that request comes from them to us, and then in those instances, I have in each one of them, I have assisted file the joining lawsuit, we've achieved the goal. But they're the leaders of the pack, so that would be the first place to go. They may send you down to the court to talk to somebody down there. I'm not sure which one of the regulatory people, most likely the woman at Captain Chernich, who seems to be involved in much of Lake County's regulations, but there isn't a lot more we can do at this point in time.
Well, clearly, there's two issues here. One is the whole issue of proper management of the property in terms of terms that you use, water management. That's not what we're concerned about. We have every confidence that this board and Corps and everybody else is going to do what is legally right. Our concern is how our neighborhood looks.
Oh, I understand what your concerns are, and I don't mean to sound like I'm not paying attention to that.
I understand.
My issue is what powers do we have to enforce sort of sightliness on a vacant piece of property? So we have all those weed laws, but those weed laws really only apply to developed property.
Well, you know, again, that's the last thing I mentioned. I'm just wondering if it might be worth 10 minutes for somebody on this board to contact the city of Lake Bluff and ask about the ordinance they have, or for you, Mr. Long, to contact their city attorney and ask about the language of the ordinance and what it permits and doesn't permit, and that maybe this board could consider a similar type of thing, at least to prevent it from happening in the future.
And if there is interest in the trustees, I'd be happy to create such an ordinance. As I said, we've discussed it in the past and it didn't go anywhere, but.
All right, well, I appreciate your time and your listening to us.
Bob, before you leave too, provide me with your name and your phone number.
Sure.
We will contact Stormwater just to see if we can expedite their report or their, get back to us and, see what else we could do from that point on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Oh, you want my name?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Phil Tarpey, 124 Pennsylvania.
You're a retired public works.
Yeah. Well, tree ordinances, I'm not for all of them. Some of them, in my opinion, have gone way too far as telling people what they can and can't do. I understand some people don't want to be told what to do, And I've seen some people say, well, you can't put a tree here, I gotta put a tree there, and in 2 years it moved away. These trees are gonna be here, or they're not gonna be here for 100 to 150 years. I would like some, again, in my opinion, some of these trees that have been here for 50 years, that might have another 100 years left in them, but maybe we should take another look at keeping them here. Don't go have somebody come down and cut down every oak and maple and sycamore tree that could be here, adding beauty, not only the shade, it does help with the environment, saving some energy if you can shade your house a little bit. Years ago, I planted 3 oak trees in the parkway. The gentleman came out, they had a cost share, and he just kind of looked at them. The price of trees then was high after, I think, the Japanese beetle. And he just looked at them kind of funny, and said, he wasn't happy. I said, you were expecting more? I said, yeah. I said, we're planting these for your grandkids. Okay? That's why, if we had some kind of ordinance, we'd have something to go, if this happened again against somebody. I don't know how, I've been out in the field. I don't know how all the legal stuff, you know what you're talking about, there's no doubt.
These are the folks that make the decision.
Right.
If they want one, I'll write it. I'm
Sure.
happy to do that.
And
I'm just expressing an opinion whether they should or shouldn't. That's
No,
all.
I'd like
to see the ordinance and like how it's worded too.
and some of it, I believe,
Quantity of trees,
Goes too far.
quantity is not a bad idea.
some of it, they're telling people you have to plant, and the problem with part of it was that I saw was some of the elders that had a tree that needed, they were afraid it was gonna come down, if the neighbor was complaining it was gonna come down in their house. Well, to take it down in a certain person's opinion, they say it's healthy. You can't tell for sure. If a tree comes down, what's the cost of the damage done? Well, if the person that the arborist, let's say, didn't agree with the homeowner took it down, the permit could cost them thousands of dollars, and some of these people couldn't afford that. Sure. That was within the ordinance. I think it can be done where it can help a lot of people. And I think, look into the future of planting and maybe keeping some of these trees out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else for a public hearing? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Louis Harpus. I don't actually physically live in the city of Winthrop Harbor, but I am in the Winthrop Harbor Fire District.
Okay.
I'm out at 42071 North Kenosha Road. I'm here tonight to express my concerns with the understaffing of your fire department. And I don't know if you guys are aware of that at this point or not, but it's kind of becoming from my point where it's getting slower and slower response times to emergency calls, rescue calls, and it's concerning that you dial 911 is somebody going to show up. So I just wanted to bring it up as to it's concerning that you don't know if somebody's going to come to your house and you dial 911 anymore.
I know the dispatch is going on at Monday Line now, so.
Yeah, and we got 2 gentlemen over there that can speak for it right now. Has there been any slower response time to?
Generally, our response times are within 4 minutes. I mean, out to the west side of town, sometimes a little bad. In fact, do you have any specific instances that you can reference that were delayed? In general, we're right around 4 minutes. Sometimes if it's a multiple call situation, it's longer, or it's shorter because we're calling Zion for our help, for help, and vice versa. So, I mean, the board and staff knows that we are a volunteer or a part-time agency, so staffing is always a little bit of a concern for us. But we're all holding our own, and we have relatively few uncovered shifts, and when we do have an uncovered shift, we rely on our neighbors for help. So I'm not entirely sure delayed response times is completely accurate, unless you have some, like I say, some examples that you can reference for me.
I don't have any.
Otherwise, we're pretty steady with
Roughly 7 minutes. The national average 7 minutes is usually a time, and he's saying we're at 4.
Yeah, definitely. See, the national average is a little bit skewed because that takes into account rural areas that can be
Okay.
10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily, apples to apples comparison. But for the services that we provide and are afforded, I believe we're pretty solid for the most part. I appreciate your concern. It's always a concern when there's an emergency and we get to it quickly. And
Right.
some days are a little better than others depending on what's going on that day.
There's not a kind of a day that goes by or a week that goes by that, I sit with staff, or we just had our department head meeting, that we don't talk about staffing levels, especially when it affects issues like emergency services and public safety. And we're continuing to look at innovative ways to attract and retain, as well as to make sure that we increase the number of staff to make sure we've got a steady flow of not only fire and paramedic personnel, but police personnel as well. So we certainly recognize that public safety is paramount to the health and welfare of any community. So, and I'm confident that both of our service chiefs do everything possible to make sure that the response time is the time that's necessary to address issues. But I will assure you personally, sir, that I guarantee you we're working at staffing. I look at that very, very close on the public safety side. I would never want anything to compromise the health and welfare of the community. So appreciate your comments, absolutely.
And the only alternative is it's us, Newport Beach Park. Zion is its own entity. Am I speaking to the right cause here? So it's either Newport, we have a fire district that we serve, and that fire district comes out. Newport has a fire district they serve, and Beach Park does. Zion's in its own city, but helps
Yeah,
respond.
Zion is self-contained. The interesting part, just a short bit of background, I know we don't want to drag this out too long. His area is in unincorporated Lake County, Zion mailing address, but they are their own area of fire protection district that contracts with us to provide services. And that's renewed on an annual basis. I think we might be in the middle of a 3-year contract now. And so, yeah, you're right, not in the village of Winthrop Harbor, but we still proudly cover you. And again, if there was an incident now or in the future, please let me know. That seems like it was a delayed response time. Mayor referenced dispatch coming out of Mundelein now. That's true, but that really hasn't affected response times at all. They still get the call the same amount of time, and they still press the buttons to tone us out the same amount of time. So that really has not affected response times. So for what we have with the all part-time department, I think actually we do pretty well. But again, any issues with that, our door is always open.
We should also add that with the dispatch from Mundelein, where we have one dispatcher typically on duty, they have multiple. So if anything, the response times and the action requirements are quicker now with the consolidation than it was before.
But you're the consumer, so I mean.
Yeah, if there's something.
If there's something we want to know about it, absolutely.
Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
a specific event or a call that didn't meet the requirements, let us know.
All right, I will do that. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I?
Yes.
For the record, I'm Jane Hall, 9600 17th Street. No, I'm not in the village, however, it's because the mailbox sits on the other side of the street. I'm county, but I do rely on these guys for medical, and I know for a fact that they can respond from the station here to the corner of their jurisdiction in less than 2 minutes. I had a cardiac event a couple of years ago, and they were right there, professional to the T. We didn't get personal. They didn't even call me by name until we were in the ambulance, headed to the hospital. Then we joked about people not pulling over because they didn't know who was in the ambulance. Okay? But they can respond, and they do respond in a timely manner. If there are instances where they didn't, I've got one where they did. They're offset.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Just a question then, you have records, like even if someone wants to ask about a certain date in the past, they can contact you to get the actual call response time. So if there are any specific dates or something, they can always contact you and find out.
Everything is timestamped to the second, really, and, so we can always look that up, and we're happy to do so if somebody has a question for us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, anyone else? Okay, move on down to unfinished business. I'll start with Trustee Weiss.
I have nothing.
Trustee Levin. I have nothing. Trustee Marabella.
We got, and I'm not stealing any thunder here, but, I know fall ball's gonna start, so just be careful on my road. Careful all around the village. Not my road, it's West Broadway, but West Broadway is the bad one, because the bike path's there, the kids cross the street, and you don't see them running out. I mean, it's really bad there. The other village ball fields are, most of the parking lots go to the field, you don't have to cross the road to get to them. That's what I meant to say. And then on the other, school's starting soon, so let's just be careful, watch out for the kids. I know school's starting up, people will be running around, and, I know our road work, Tim isn't here tonight, but our road works are finishing up, our little project, so most of them look pretty good. I know he got to do some extra painting. I don't know if he's been out to do all of that or got all that incorporated, but his plan is to do some extra patching and the money we saved. That's all I got.
Thank you, Trustee Marabella. Trustee Parker.
We had talked in the last meeting about the Northern Lakeshore trail that's being planned. That would go from Winthrop Harbor through to North Chicago along the lakefront. So again, just a reminder of connectthenorthernlakeshore.com. In the last meeting, I talked about the kiosk will be here Labor Day weekend. It'll actually the 27th through September 5th for residents to view that and give feedback. I don't think at the last meeting I had the date. There is going to be a public meeting in Waukegan on September 19th to give input as well. But if you visit the connectthenorthernlakeshore.com, you can sign up to get updates as well. Also remind you to continue visiting on your computer or mobile device, explorewinthopharbor.com, and you can do explorewinthopharbor.com/events. There's quite a bit going on this weekend. There is a boat show at Skipper Bud's, a yacht rock at the docks hosted by the Tropics. It's also the 20th anniversary of the Illinois Beach State Park Hawk Watch. And so they have an event down in the southern unit, but there's a group of volunteers. Actually, they're looking for more volunteers if you're interested in joining as a group that watches. There's a massive raptor migration every year of hawks and eagle that come over our area and as part of their migration south. And so we're getting to that season where you want to have your eyes on the sky and look for several thousand will travel over the area during that time. But they're looking for volunteers to help count as those come through, but their 20th anniversary celebration is this weekend as well. The other thing I just want to say is our committee of the whole meeting last week was really good. So I appreciate, Greg and Bob, the presentation that you guys gave, but even just having that conversation, and being able to have kind of a working session felt really good, and just want to suggest that maybe we just do that a couple times a year to talk through different updates of things that are going on and work through some of those projects that are out on the horizon. So that is all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Hart. Trustee McCarthy.
I just want to thank Village Administrator Greg Jackson for the budget calendar. I'm really excited about the work that's being done to see how ahead of the game we're getting with that, specifically with the wage policy and the job descriptions. I mean, that's something I know I've wanted to see for a while, like us really work on fine-tuning that, so I'm excited to see that. I thank you for the work you put into that. And I don't want to take anything away from Trustee Whitmore, but just I was able to attend the rec board meeting last week, and I appreciated the presentation you gave regarding the parks, the open spaces plan, and the possibilities for that. And that's all I'll say, because I don't want to take.
No, that's okay.
And just one other thing, just to mention, so the police department is participating this Saturday. Is that the DUI, what is it, saturation? Is that what it's called? I'm trying to read
Yeah,
that.
in conjunction with the nationwide MAD movement.
So what is the name of
Mothers
it?
Against Drunk Driving. It's a DUI saturation patrol.
What does that, entail?
We have a.
Don't drive drunk over the.
No, I understand that, but our participation in that, I read the email, but I'm like, I'm sure someone else can explain this better than me.
Right. The department's, through federal funding, through IDOT, we get additional money to have additional officers on the street during DUI enforcement.
And tell them to avoid Robbie's Road.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
So, thank you.
That's it. Thank you, Trustee McCray. Trustee Whitmore.
Yeah, just to expand off of, what he said is, thank you so much for putting together the presentation for the Parks and Rec meeting. We had a really great turnout, a really great response. I had several people come up to me after the presentation, just explaining their gratitude for, just kind of the movement forward and really what we're trying to do with the department. And also I was going to touch on the Hawk Watch as well, just to kind of expand on that. They also have activities for children, so volunteers or anyone who wants to go out, they do have some activities for the children as well.
Great. Thank you.
And that's it.
Great. Just a couple of things. I'd like to thank all the residents that came out tonight too. Thanks for coming to the meeting and giving us information that, quite honestly, I didn't know some of that stuff. So, the other item is I would like to also thank Greg for all that he does. And the other item is I'm going to be making a couple appointments to the rec board. I'm going to review what we have right now and contact some of the people that I have on my list. And then also I need to make an appointment to the planning and zoning board, so I'm going to be working on that as well. So that's basically all I have. We don't need.
What about those guys?
We did every way that way.
We don't that way?
We did.
Oh, boy, I'm not paying attention.
I'll be like,
We talked so much on this.
I tried to fix it up. All right, we don't need a closed session tonight, so I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, okay, someone had a motion.
Wow.
That's all. That's nice. You do have to call 11.
All right.